It was 7 years after I became a freelance writer that I visited the mountain. I got off the train at the station in a southern town in a southern prefecture and rode the bus for an hour and a half. When the number of houses gradually began to dwindle, we arrived at the bus stop called the entrance to the mountain trail. As soon as we got off the bus, the cicada rain was painful to the ears. The sun was shining strongly even though the trees were shading us from the sun. I turned my eyes and saw a wooden sign. The symbol was rotten, but the handwritten words "Unwanted Mountain" were barely legible. This must be the place, I was convinced. It was only in the last few years that the strange story of the Unwanted Mountain began circulating on the internet. According to the story, there is a cave in the Unwanted Mountain, and as you go deeper into the cave, you will find a large vertical hole. It is said that anything you throw down that hole will never come back. A man thought to himself, if it never comes back, doesn't that mean that whatever falls into the hole will never be found? The man dropped his mother, with whom he had a disagreement, into the hole and carried out the perfect murder without the corpse. The story itself was not so new, but it was a variant of the Yuriyama ghost story. However, what started out as nothing more than a rumor circulating among ghost story aficionados has now become a bit of a boom. The reason for the boom is clear. Apparently, the mountain really exists. The reason for the boom is obvious. The mountain really does exist. As a writer of ghost stories myself, I wanted to verify the veracity of these stories. After several months of research, I was able to obtain testimony that the mountain in the southern prefecture was the Unwanted Mountain. I stepped out into the Unwanted Mountain territory. The temperature seemed to drop dramatically. A cool breeze brushed my back. After a short walk, we soon entered a dense thicket of bushes. It was almost like an animal trail, and we had to search for a path through the thick vegetation. I must have walked for about an hour. I arrived at an open meadow. I sat down on one of the rocks and quenched my thirst with a plastic tea bottle. There were no caves on the path so far, and no strange phenomena were taking place. It was a refreshing mountain. I began to worry a little that we might have wasted our time. I decided to go home if I could not find anything after a few more days of climbing. That was when I heard the sound of a nearby bush. I heard the sound of a bush nearby, and 2 figures appeared. They were a child of about 5 years old and a woman, who appeared to be the mother of the child. As soon as I saw them, I felt something strange. They were dressed too lightly. The child was wearing a t-shirt and short pants, and the mother was wearing a skirt and a cardigan. Her shoes were pumps. I bailed out to them. The mother gave me a thin smile and bailed back. Her face was dark, and her smile was somewhat wan. The child was expressionless, looking down at the ground. The mother had heard rumors of an unwanted mountain and had come up the mountain to abandon her child. I shuddered as the thought crossed my mind. "Hello," I called out casually. The 2 men stopped and stared at me. Their expressions were blank, as if they could not read any emotion. I asked, "What's down the road?"
"I don't know. I'm not a local."
The mother blurted out, "Are you all right? You both look very lightly dressed." This time there was no reply, and they walked past me and away down the gentle uphill road. I watched their backs for a while as they disappeared from sight. I thought about following them, but for some reason, I just couldn't get my footing. I felt a cold sweat running down my back, an instinctive fear I guess you could call it. After a while, I followed the path they had taken, and suddenly the atmosphere of the mountain changed drastically. Earlier I had heard birds and insects chirping in the crisp air, but now I could not hear a single sound of insects. The trees were over our heads like umbrellas, the sun was not shining, and it was getting damp. It was as if a heavy air was pressing down on my whole body. My legs stopped moving, and I began to walk a few steps, and then stop again. It was as if there was stagnant air flowing in from the top of the mountain, and it was clinging to my legs. I decided to go down the mountain. It may have all been an illusion created by my imagination, but the overwhelming negative force of the mountain broke my heart. Just as I was about to turn on my heel, I noticed a small figure descending from above. A shiver ran through my body. The boy I had seen earlier, a father and son, was coming down the mountain alone. The boy was staring at the point in the air as he came down the mountain. He seemed to be oblivious to my presence as he passed right in front of me. I let out a cry as if squeezing it out of my parched throat. "Where's your mother?" I asked, and the boy turned around and chuckled.